Oh, there you are, Hidden Nation. So good to see you. Welcome into the studio. You got Josh Carey here. It's your hidden entrepreneur. Hidden Nation, if you ever wanted a conversation where we're welcomed by what I think is going to be the most interesting man in the world, you may have heard that before, but I think we got him. Today is our day. We're joined by our guest, Dr. Peter Favaro, who is a forensic psychologist, but oh, so much more. He's on his 20th book. I said 20th. It's called The Bad People Bible. What a great title, right? The Bad People Bible. Dr. Peter is a child, among other things. He's a child and adolescent psychologist specializing in custody and parenting time evaluations, civility, and abuse evaluations. We got to get into all of this. And who better than Dr. Peter himself? Welcome, Doctor, to the program.
Nice to be here. No pressure after that introduction.
Well, I mean, we've spent a few minutes before air talking, and I just got that impression. I'm like, you know so much. Let's help unravel some of this. So let's just start broadly. You have a PhD. Set the tone. What is the PhD in? Maybe this will help give us some direction and insight.
I actually have two PhDs.
Of course.
One PhD is in clinical psychology, which has granted me entrance into the world of forensics. And the other PhD is in school community psychologist. Because earlier in my career, I did a lot of writing about child development.
And how do people work with you on a day-to-day basis? What do you do well?
Well, I mean, the court will give me an assignment, which is to evaluate parents who are going through brutal custody struggles. There's a lot of violence in those cases. Or the international courts will give me an assignment to evaluate child kidnapping under the Hague Convention. In some cases, there's a criminal component to it, like a family murder. And I will do an evaluation. Sometimes a judge will require children to speak to me before even law enforcement about what they have witnessed in terms of violence in their home. Unfortunately, sometimes it results in murder, which is a horrible aspect of my job. But all of that work combined keeps me on my toes. I never do the same thing twice, in one week. So it keeps me hopping. I've been at it for 40 years.
Wow. Your current book, The Bad People Bible, I've mentioned you wrote 20 books. One of them was called Anger Management. And you also talk and teach on parenting. So I'm guessing all of these are slightly, if not more, interwoven together. How to be a good person, a good parent, how to control your anger.
There are common threads. The cesspool that I swim in sometimes, is a very nasty place where people do horrible things to one another. And I wrote the book, The Bad People Bible, because people don't really know what they're getting into when they connect with others sometimes. And I want to use my forensic expertise to teach people how to develop the skills involved in truly evaluating people. Know what you're getting into, because most people don't. Most people, they they see the world as, well, everybody's good in some ways. Everybody is born into this world good. I don't believe that. I think that there are some people who are born into this world bad.
And the Bad People Bible is about helping us with open eyes identify who's good, who's bad.
Yes. Now, of course, there's a difference between people who do bad things. I've done bad things. You've done bad things, versus people who are bad to the core,
Okay.
and are proud of it and use it and entrap people and manipulate people and exploit people. And, most of the high conflict divorce cases that I work in involve some very bad behavior toward the partner, and often a bad person, because bad people can make very good impressions at first.
Hmm. Just going to let that sit. So, what do we do about that?
Well, the first thing you have to know is you have to know what a bad person looks like and how a bad person behaves. And then I teach people how to cut and run, how to eliminate those people and their toxic influence in your life. There's a lot of people who, for some reason, they love talking about diagnostic labels. This person's a narcissist. I married a narcissist. I married a borderline personality. But those diagnostic labels don't do anything. There's a process in science called reification, where you explain something by naming it. So you don't like this person, you don't like the way they're treating you, so you call them a narcissist. Well, that doesn't explain anything. That's just a shorthand word for saying, the person is egocentric and aggressive, but doesn't teach you how to identify that and how to deal with it.
What about the idea of someone says, "Oh, I'm always attracted to the bad boy, and I always find myself in these relationships." So, what you're talking about, identifying is one thing, but what about the fact that people are always just drawn to it and keep repeating these?
I think it boosts people's ego to think that their love can cure uncurable people. It's the partner as science project point of view.
Yeah, I'm going to fix them.
I'm going to fix this guy by loving him, and he's going to realize that it's better to be with somebody who loves them than just somebody they're screwing over or taking advantage of.
So, you help people before they get into these partnerships and relationships to identify what's the step process here. How does it
Well,
work?
actually don't help them doing that. I usually get to these people after they've been run over by bad people.
To what end?
Well, they're in a horrible relationship. The relationship turns violent. They're exploited. They're taken for all their money. Their children are taken away from them because, a lot of the time in the court cases, people who are abused often lose custody of their kids, believe it or not, because the courts really need to be educated about this type of toxic behavior. How do you tell? You're starting to ask me. Well, in the beginning of a relationship, there's always a honeymoon period. It's usually about a year, sometimes about 2 years. So you have to keep your eyes open for behavior outside your relationship. Bad people are usually hyper competitive. They're usually also hypercritical of other people. They like to get into fights and they brag about getting into fights. Every day is a new story about somebody in a retail store who tried to screw them over, or a rude waiter in a restaurant, or somebody on the road who cut them off. Those are all warning signs when someone does that. Uh, how do they treat other people? How do they treat people at work? How do they talk to people at work? And I always point out that one telltale sign of a bad person is that they divide the world into two groups. Everybody who's like me and assholes. So they really have, it's not just narcissism. It's just bad. It's just bad behavior. And I tell people all the time, you don't have to be mentally ill to be bad. Some people are just that way. Also, bad people are scorekeepers. They are very revenge oriented. I'm not going to let anybody get over on me. I'm going to hurt them worse than they tried to hurt me. They don't have much of a capacity for insight, which is how people often describe narcissistic people. They're ungrateful. They lose the capacity to be appreciative in a relationship. And you start to rack up these. Oh, here's another one. They'll talk a lot about violence. right, about what they're going to do to someone, even though it's big talk and they're not really violent, they'll get there. And they do get there in relationships. No apologies for behavior. When a bad person does something bad, they'll apologize by saying, "I'm sorry you think I hurt your feelings."
Mm.
That's one of my favorite things, right? It's like, "I'm sorry
Yeah.
that your face got in the way of my fist."
Yeah. There's no apology. It's a disguised apology. Who is,
Yes.
yeah. Who is
Yeah.
this book written for?
I think, so I've been writing this book for about a year, and I talk about it to people, and everybody I talk about it to says, "I want that book," because everybody knows a bad person,
Uh,
or several bad people.
Yeah. And it's usually the ones closest to us, right? It could be family, it could be friends,
It's often
lovers.
family, it's often friends, it's most often, I think, people that we develop close relationships with, and
Mm.
they catch us unaware. Because, like I said, bad people are great starters in relationships. They're fantastic starters. That's why you have to look beyond that relationship and how they treat other people.
Let me help me break down the word bad in this context. Are we talking mean, violent, vicious, abusive? What are we talking about when we say bad?
All of those things, right? So all of us can be bad from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
All of us can lose our temper from time to time. All of us can be selfish from time to time, self-righteous from time to time. Bad people are like that almost all the time. And when I do something selfish or self-righteous or mean, when I think about my own behavior, I say, I really got to work on that. I have to
Yeah.
correct it.
Yeah.
When bad people operate, they don't do that. They say, "Well, I wouldn't have been this way if you weren't
Wow.
such a jerk."
Wow.
You know, they think you have to correct your behavior. We wouldn't have had that fight if you didn't annoy me so much.
Why do they do this? What do they get out of it? What's their goal?
So here's it's not very intuitive.
Hmm.
One goal is to elevate themselves by putting somebody else down. There's a great need for self-promotion in bad people, but self-promotion by really villainous means.
At your expense.
At the expense they don't care about,
Right.
right? Other than that, the bad person has a real problem with interpersonal attachments.
Meaning,
Meaning, if you and I were to become friends with one another, I would want to do things that promote your well-being. A bad person doesn't care about your well-being. They care about entrapping you to do things that promote their well-being. And when a bad person is connected to you, they'll become worse when you try to pull away, because bad people have problems with attachment. And if they can't stay attached to you through collaboration, love, respect, they'll stay attached to you through conflict.
is
That's why in all these high conflict divorces that I do, as soon as one person starts to seek the divorce, the partner stalks them, intimidates them, writes stuff about them on social media. I mean, I get that in cases all the time.
is this it sounds like to my novice eyes looking in, it's just an insecurity. Is that where it stems? Is it that at all? Is it much more than that?
It is related to insecurity. I think if you look at the proportions, you'll find that most people are more insecure than secure.
Overall, everybody.
Over,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody.
Interesting.
Everybody wants acceptance and everybody wants love. And, you should really be able to love yourself more than anyone. But that's not how things tend to operate. And it's especially true in women, because women are still, as much strides as women have made and still need to make, they are still the caregivers. They are still the nurturers. They are still the people who make everybody else feel good. So
Can
they are the people who are most unappreciated.
Yeah. Can these bad people we're speaking of, can they change? Do they change?
No effing way. They do not change.
They don't want to and they can't. It's just semantics. It's all the same. They just
Uh,
don't.
It could be it could be hardwired.
Yeah.
You look at people who are jailed for violent crimes and the recidivism rate for people who are jailed for violent crimes. It it's very high. I'm not saying people can't be rehabilitated from a criminal perspective,
Right.
but from an interpersonal perspective, they just move from relationship to relationship to relationship to exploit their partners, take advantage of their partners. They are serial abusers. We
Is
have
it
a term. We have a term now called intimate partner violence, which is an updated term for an abusive partner.
okay?
Up until the last 20 years, domestic violence was characterized as battery and assault. Now we see that patterns of behavior that result in humiliating, entrapping, and taking advantage of their partners, that is now considered a form of domestic violence.
Is gaslighting is in that category?
Yeah, I hate that word
Why?
because people don't understand what it means.
Tell me.
Um, Gaslighting is meant to be a term that describes a person who makes you feel crazy when they do something bad.
Fine.
But nowadays, gaslighting is used to describe any behavior you don't like.
Oh, like, excuse me, gaslighting. And now I
Right.
think that I've won the argument.
Yeah. Yeah. You're gaslighting me. Yeah.
I
You
see.
just called me a fucking idiot 25 times, but that's gaslight. But that's the other person gaslighting them.
I
You
get it.
know,
I get it.
and I so hate that term because it's so easy.
Yeah. To label and to
Yeah,
categorize. Yeah.
I don't like and that's why bad people is the most general label you could possibly give anybody.
So they're not going to change. So if we find ourselves in a relationship with a bad person, you're saying the only option is to find a way out.
That's right. I say cut and run.
But is it that easy? What is the option? How do
Oh,
you get out?
I mean, good advice is often not easy. It's really easy to give.
Yeah.
People even pay me to give advice that's easy to give, but it's hard to do. Very, very hard to do, especially when in these
Hmm.
divorce cases and these kidnapping cases that I do where
Jeez.
people have a child in common.
Who's getting kidnapped in these cases?
There's two flavors of that. Under the Hague Convention, which is an international treaty, a person can escape a country and flee, let's say, to the United States. And then the goal is to prove that the children were in grave danger in the country that the parent took the child and fled from. Right? So abused woman in another country, abused by her husband, trafficked, prostituted in certain cases, can't take it anymore, and flees to the United States, sometimes legally, sometimes not legally. Then the judges here, they're the federal judges. The judges have to decide whether or not the child would be at grave risk if they were returned to their home country. So in those cases, I actually oftentimes help the abductor by proving to a judge that their life was in danger in their home country and their children's lives were at grave risk of harms in their home country. The other flavor of it are people who come to the United States and a judge has to consider whether or not it is a wrongful abduction. Did they come here under a pretense? So in that case, I seek the return of the child to their home country and help return that child. But they're very complicated cases.
Yeah. I want to pivot to anger management.
Yes.
How is this book of yours, anger management, how is it positioned? Meaning, what is the thesis? What is the theme? What is the idea here in the book?
The book is actually half about managing your own anger
Yeah.
and half about managing the angry behavior of others.
Are they equally as important?
Uh, yeah, and I think you can consider Bad People Bible an extension of that. Okay. Because you're managing bad behavior from bad people. And that's often angry, aggressive, violent behavior.
And sometimes that will instill a sense of anger into me, let's say, because I feel angry and upset with myself that I'm in this position. I'm trapped in this position. I can't get out of it. Why is this happening? All that stuff can turn into anger.
That's what, one of my main pieces of advice is always don't ever go punch for punch with an angry person unless you're pathologically angry yourself, because they're better at it than you are. And they'll concentrate it on you and punish you for it. So then I advise people, when they deal with angry people, less is more, and nothing is almost better than less. We have an expression about dealing with crazy angry people called gray rocking, which is the goal is to treat that person who's trying to exploit you like they're a gray rock. So when you're walking down the street, and if you were to see a gray rock, what would you do?
Nothing.
Exactly. So so Bad People Bible and also the anger management book talks a lot about how to gray rock people. And it's all about quenching what that angry person will do to you. And the best example of that is always something like road rage. You're driving along on the expressway and somebody cuts you off and steps on the brake, and your immediate response is to retaliate.
Mm-hmm.
But they're crazy and you're not. So they'll take it to an extreme where you could wind up dead.
So the technique is, as you're saying, find a way to process it where you almost have little to no reaction healthily to their anger.
Yes. And I mean, somebody's bothering you, just ignore them. They'll go away. Easiest advice in the world until you try to employ it.
And they don't go away.
Right. But if you're a person like me, I'm an emotional person to begin with. I come from a very, very strict, all Sicilian, Italian American family. So anger is a way of life for us, So that's my biggest challenge is dealing with people who just push my buttons, and I know I have to ignore it. But it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I'm in a job where lawyers attack me when I testify in court. They try to make it seem like I'm incompetent. They drag up information from your past. Didn't you get a C- on your third grade report card? And it's all to poke you into responding, so you make a bad impression on the judges. But after 40 years and 40,000 cases, no, 4,000 cases, sorry. I've learned not to let people get to me.
What is the process for managing our own anger, if you have one?
It's a lot of different processes. I promote a lot of self-talk, and I promote people asking themselves questions when they're in the middle of an angry interaction. Say, where's this getting me? Where is this process going to lead? What are the potential consequences to what I'm engaging in right now? Why is it so hard for me to disengage from this and just go along on my way? Those are all the rhetorical questions that I teach people to ask themselves. I also teach people to do things like say to the abuser or the angry person or the bad person, I don't like the way this is making me feel right now. And I don't think I can stay in this conversation much longer. So I'm just going to leave. And then you have to deal, what are you, a coward? What are you with this? What are you with that? Yep. You got me right. And then just keep going. I call it's like a mental jujitsu type of thing that you
Oh, yeah.
have to learn how to deal with people.
I know it takes time, and it is possible with some self-awareness, self-reflection, and effort and energy put towards your cause and a true desire and ability to implement and achieve it. But it's all possible.
Yeah, sometimes you can't get away from it. Like when you have to deal with a bad person at work or a bad boss.
Hmm.
My first piece of advice is get a new job, dude.
True. Think about the choices you have, and things start to open up. Dr. Peter Favaro, incredible. The Bad People Bible. I'm upset we didn't get to the parenting aspect of all this.
Well, let's do another one.
We shall do another one because you have a ton of good parenting advice, and I am a parent needing advice. So let's welcome you back. The book is The Bad People Bible, one of 20 books in Dr. Peter's repertoire. Check it out right now. Can't wait to do it again, Doctor. Thank you for joining the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And there you go, Hidden Nation. Hopefully something here resonated. If you are drawn to taking the next step in this context in the way you know you should, go do it. Make something good happen. You are worth it. Be seen, be visible, get out there, put your best foot forward. We're going to do this again before too long. Until we meet again, Hidden Nation, take care, be well.